I'm Susan Murphy. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, the drought experts hoping for a white Christmas in the Sierra Nevada.
If it all fell as rain, well, that would help, but it'd be a lot better if a lot of that fell as snow.
The new online tool giving you a reality check on the state's water supply.
High surf, high tides, and warm temps in San Diego waters. What this unusual combination means for our winter weather. I'm Peggy Pico. Also ahead, how an international dream team, including local doctors and researchers, plan to tackle pancreatic cancer.
And all the buzz over awarding for drone operators. The questions prompted by new websites promising to help them navigate new drone regulations. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. State water officials consider a move that would change your water bill. The State Water Board plans to change the fee to water providers that covers water quality on water monitoring. Officials say residents whose drinking water comes from large public water systems may see their water bill increase, while those in smaller water systems could see a decrease.
In the scheme of things, I think we're looking at $1.50-ish per service connection. So over the course of a year, somewhere between $1.50 to $2 per service connection in the biggest systems.
State water officials say the fee is necessary to cover employees' salaries and the cost of inspections. This year's El Niño is predicted to be one of the strongest on record. That means San Diego could be in for a very wet winter. But what are the chances of El Niño putting a real dent in California's drought? Over the next few months, KPBS will be tracking rain and snowfall throughout the state to find out. Today, KPBS science reporter David Wagner introduces us to a new online tracking tool as California is running dry.
After 4 years of drought, California desperately needs this winter to come bearing gifts of rain and snow. We can find some hope in El Niño, a band of warm water in the tropical Pacific Ocean that could funnel many storms our way in coming months.
It looks like El Niño has stormed ashore here on the Ventura Pier.
Strong El Niños in 1983 and 98 did deliver well above average rain and snow throughout California, including up north, where storms are really needed to replenish the state's water supply. But will this year's El Niño be a real drought buster?
The Western Pacific is really deep, so you can store a lot of heat.
I put that question to Scripps Institution of Oceanography climate researcher Dan Cahan.
Every El Niño is sort of a different shape, size, color, and we'll see. But those large events give us some hope that we will see the moisture being delivered in the water-bearing areas of the state.
Cahan says the catch is it'll have to be a very strong El Niño, one that doesn't just drench Southern California. We're getting close to the moment of truth. California's wet season started in October, and it'll likely end by the beginning of April.
It's during that period of October through April that we achieve the lion's share of the precipitation here, probably more than 80%.
With that in mind, KPBS has put together an online tool that will be tracking rain and snow throughout the state over the next few months. We'll check in with the KPBS Drought Tracker periodically to tell you how this year's precipitation is stacking up to an average year. We'll compare this year's rain and snow to what California has received in recent drought years, and to what the state got in 1998, a major El Niño year. San Diego may get drenched, but if more critical parts of California stay dry, the Drought Tracker will give us a statewide reality check.
Well, San Diego people should understand that we import over 80% of our water, so what actually happens locally in the county doesn't make that much of a difference to our water supply.
David Pierce is another climate researcher at Scripps.
A lot of warming off our coast.
Pierce is helping KPBS track statewide rainfall by compiling data from nearly 100 weather stations throughout California. All that data comes together and gives us a percentage. It's a percentage of what's normal for a typical winter. That number will gradually increase from October to April as we get more rain and snow.
it's continually growing over the whole season. So today, for example, as we're speaking, it's about 7.5%, and it goes up every day if we get a little bit of rain.
So if we check the KPBS drought tracker on April 1st at the very end of the wet season and we see rainfall at 100%, that means we'll have had a perfectly normal rain year.
And at the end of the year, if it ends up at 100%, that's just kind of average. So hopefully it'll be a typical strong El Nino. It'll be up there at 150 or 200% even.
California also needs above average snowfall. The Sierra Nevada snowpack is a crucial source of water for much of the state.
The northern Sierra, we got a lot of snow early.
That's why Scripps climate researcher Sam Icobellis is helping KPBS keep track of snowfall.
We've come together with a group of stations that represents the different Sierra regions, North, Central, and Southern Sierra.
Each year on April 1st, California sizes up the Sierra snowpack. A low snowpack falls somewhere below 100% of normal. A healthy snowpack rises to 100% or more. Icobellis says we should hope that El Nino steers storms up into the mountains, where they'll have a real impact on the drought.
If it all fell as rain, well, that would help, but it'd be a lot better if a lot of that fell as snow.
Dan Cahan hopes El Nino will deliver at least 100% of normal for both rain and snow this wet season.
Anything above that would be icing on the cake. In order to make a large dent in the drought, I would hope for 150% of average.
So there's our goal, 50% above normal for both rain and snow. Come April, we'll consult the KPBS drought tracker and we'll let you know if we made that goal. David Wagner, KPBS News.
KPBS video journalist Katie Shulove helped produce that story. To see the KPBS drought tracker for yourself, go to kpbs.org/drought tracker. From high tides to big surf and a warm zone called the blob, Peggy Pico explains what the unusual combination means for San Diego's winter weather.
The latest data finds tropical Pacific Ocean temperatures are at a record high, warmer than back in 1997 when the last Super El Nino hit San Diego. Add a series of exceptionally high tides and the warm water blob, and what do we get this winter? Here with the answers are USGS and Scripps Institution of Oceanography climate researcher Dan Cahan and meteorologist Alex Tardy at NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And Alex, on Monday, the National Weather Service said ocean temperatures are higher by 3 degrees Celsius or more than 5 degrees Fahrenheit. What does that tell us about El Nino and winter weather?
Yeah, so what we do is every week we take a look at how strong the sea surface temperatures are in the heart of El Nino. And this week it came out at 3 Celsius, or like you said, over 5 Fahrenheit. That tells us that we've now passed 97, 98 in terms of weekly temperatures. We can't declare it as the strongest on record, though. We still got to wait a couple months because we average it all together. But what it tells us is the El Nino continues to grow in terms of strength, and it's there. So now it's a matter of when will we start seeing these storms.
And Dan, I've read that around Thanksgiving and Christmas of this year, higher than usual tides are also expected in San Diego. What does that mean for people living in, say, Imperial Beach or La Jolla?
Well, the real issue is whether we'll get a big storm on top of those high tides coincident with. There is sort of a preliminary sign in the numerical forecasts that Alex and I were just talking about that indicates we may see a storm this Thanksgiving period or slightly after. And so this really bears watching. If we get on top of the highest tides, we have an inflated sea level already of a little more than half a foot because of the warmer water and El Nino effect. And then if we get a big storm, of course, we get big waves. So that's the prescription for a lot of concern along the coastal area.
Right, we're actually looking at some video from years back of El Nino, and it looks pretty impressive there. And but there's another ocean phenomena happening. And Dan, tell us about the so-called blob. What is it, and how could it influence our weather?
Well, we've had this warm water condition along the eastern Pacific, both up north along the Pacific Northwest as well as along the California and Baja coast for a year and perhaps as much as 2 years now. A lot of that was because of this pattern of very high pressure we had that was associated with this extreme dry condition that we had last winter and the winter before. We think that warm water may add a little moisture to the storms that track in this winter, assuming they do. But it is not a primary cause of the winter weather. It's probably more of an effect of the previous winter. And in fact, it looks like that blob, to some extent, may be diffusing a little bit.
So maybe something we don't have to worry about. But Alex, speaking of this El Nino, it sounds like the prediction factor is going up a little bit on it. How much rain or snow could we expect from El Nino if it does come our way?
So with El Nino becoming as strong as it is now, like you described, we're running out of years to compare to, but similar to what we saw 82, 83, 97, 98, we very likely could be looking at rainfall in that category, which means for us in San Diego, we start getting over 15 inches of rain. Our normal's around 10, so giving a range of 15 to 20 is a good possibility with this coming El Nino. The key will be when that rain falls, if we distribute it real evenly or if we bring it all in a month or two time period. That'll be the big impact in terms of the runoff and the flooding.
When do we expect the El Nino, at least the first series of the storms, to start?
We should start seeing storms in a strong El Nino in November and December, but the real whites of its eyes, so the majority of the storms, typically we've seen them hold off between January, February, and March, so the latter half of the winter.
And we'll have to end on this, Dan, because you seemed a little uncertain that you're not 100% convinced that we're going to get El Nino this year?
Oh, no, I think we're definitely in for an El Nino, which is a tropical condition. The extratropics, our weather is to some extent a shotgun pattern when we look historically. One thing we can say, which Alex alluded to, the largest El Ninos have been very active winters, 82, 83, 97, 98. We'll see if this one holds up to those levels. If they do, we could be in for a very wet winter.
All right. Dan Cahan and Alex Tardy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cool fall temperatures, rain, and snow have not eliminated the risk for wildfires in California. CAL FIRE firefighters responded to 50 new wildfires in the last week. State firefighters will perform controlled burns and add more staff as they enter into their winter preparedness mode.
And in some parts of Southern California, we're still seeing significant wind events like Santa Ana winds, possibly another Santa Ana wind event later in the week. So not only do we need resources to respond to fires down in those areas, we may move resources from Northern California in areas where maybe the fire threat's a little lower, move them into those areas where there is still that high risk.
CAL FIRE says some areas of Northern California are now at a low risk for wildfires, so some fire crews are being moved to higher risk areas in the Central Valley and Southern California. San Diego's Port Commission has agreed to replace a longtime tenant on the downtown waterfront. Anthony's Fish Grotto will be replaced after more than 50 years and the building demolished to make way for a multi-restaurant complex proposed by the Brigantine. The new complex will have 6 restaurants, plus a dock and dine facility and public viewing deck. It will be known as the Portside Pier and is expected to open sometime in 2017. Anthony's is losing its lease in January 2017. Carlsbad City Council votes tonight on whether to hold a special election on a proposed outdoor shopping center by a coastal lagoon. The council has several options on what to do next about the 8515 plan. It would develop a 15% 200-acre property, and it would leave the rest open space. The council could rescind its approval of the project, put on the ballot next June or November, or call a special election in February. A special election would be the fastest way to let voters decide. It would also cost $500,000. The city of San Diego has resettled its oldest lawsuit dating back to 1995. At one point, the city would have had to pay $154 million, but KPBS's Claire Trageser says now the suit costs much less.
Developer Rocky de la Fuente II sued the city because he says it didn't give him sewer and road improvements at his Otay Mesa business park. The battle continued for 20 years in courtroom back and forths and spin-off lawsuits. Another trial date was set for this spring. Instead, insurance companies will pay de la Fuente $25 million and the city $5 million after attorney fees. City Attorney Jan Goldsmith says the deal includes a safety valve that guarantees the lawsuit is officially dead.
When I say that we turned coal into diamonds, what we did is we took all that bad stuff, all the disputes and all the litigation. We have ended it.
The deal says De La Fuente won't get most of his money until he fixes up the business park with street improvements. The developer is also running for president as a Democrat. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
A manhunt has expanded in Paris following the deadly terror attack. New surveillance video shows there may have been another suspect involved in the violence, and that person may be on the loose tonight. French security sources say the video shows that person in the car carrying the group who attacked several bars and restaurants Friday. French and Belgian police are still searching for another key suspect, Salah Abdeslam. The so-called Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for the attacks. 129 people were killed. More than 350 people were wounded. France's defense minister says 10 French fighter jets are carrying out new airstrikes today on terror group targets in Syria. 2 stadiums in Germany were evacuated after bomb threats. The stadium in Hanover was supposed to host a soccer match between Germany and the Netherlands. It was evacuated and the game was canceled. German authorities evacuated a second stadium in Hanover where people had gathered for a concert. In England, the French and English soccer teams delivered a moving display of solidarity at a friendly match. A touching pre-game ceremony at the Wembley Stadium saw both squads gather around the center circle to observe a minute's silence in honor of the 129 people killed. England won the match 2-0. Our coverage of the Paris attacks continues online at kpbs.org and on the PBS NewsHour that starts at 7 p.m. right here on KPBS. A word of caution for those who like do-it-yourself approach for drones. The Federal Aviation Administration says registering drones will be simple enough, and owners don't need to pay a drone registration firm to do it for them. Some websites are advertising registration assistance for a $25 fee. The FAA says registration plans will be released later this week. National city leaders and community members gathered today to celebrate the groundbreaking of a 221-unit low-income apartment complex. The 6-acre sustainable development will be located in a hub of business and nearby transit on the west side of the city. It will feature parks and open space and 1 to 3 bedroom units with rents ranging from $400 to $900. National City Mayor Ron Morrison says the city owns land used to be a maintenance yard for city vehicles. Now it will be a place for opportunity.
This has always been envisioned as something that is the hand up that gets people into some good housing and then allows them then to develop the skills, develop the training, develop then the income level to get in and be able to afford their own homes.
National City's medium income of $38,000 is the lowest in the county. Carolina Martinez is a policy advocate with the Environmental Health Coalition who has been working with the city residents to ensure their vision for the project has been fulfilled.
They've been working on this for more than 10 years now. They want affordable housing, and they say that this is almost like a dream come true to be able to see projects that they really need in their community happen.
The total cost of the project is $80 million, financed with cap and trade pollution funds, as well as private and public grants and loans. It will be the largest low-income housing development in National City. A new website allows California residents to see and sort state and local governments' accumulated debt. Treasurer John Chang's office built the site. He says the new site will allow the public to understand where the $1.5 trillion in debt are going. The Treasurer's site makes data available on all the different kinds of borrowing from cities, counties, schools, universities, and other state and local agencies. Scientists say they are getting closer to an HIV vaccine. The Scripps Research Institute in La Jolla announced today they have made significant progress in a recent study. Scientists were able to identify 4 antibodies that target weak spots on HIV, which could help in the development of a vaccine. November is Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, and researchers in San Diego have joined a so-called dream team of experts to tackle pancreatic cancer. Peggy Pico has an update.
It may be rare, but pancreatic cancer is the 4th leading cause of cancer deaths in the U.S. Now a $12 million effort aims to find new ways to treat and slow the growth of pancreatic cancer. Joining me is co-leader of the Dream Team, Ronald Evans, director of the Gene Expression Laboratory at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies. And Ron, more than 24 doctors and researchers from around the world are part of this Dream Team. So why is a global effort needed to conquer pancreatic cancer?
Well, if one lab or one individual could do it, it probably would have been done. And so we've thrown a lot at pancreatic cancer. It's been very rough to move the needle for survival. So we assembled a dream team of international level to try to really take a different approach, a new and innovative approach to rapid development of ideas and deployment of new therapies.
Before we get to the specifics on that, how does pancreatic cancer compare to other cancers, let's say breast or lung cancer?
The 5-year survival for pancreatic cancer is the worst that we know of. It's a very lethal diagnosis. So from the patient point of view, it's very tough because we don't have many options for treatment. So while it's relatively rare, 40,000 or so, 45,000 people will receive that diagnosis in the United States, nearly all will die in 5 years. And so and that makes the 4th leading or most deadly of the cancers.
Do we know why?
We do sort of know why. This cancer is very rough to treat because it is not just, it doesn't live alone. It lives in an ecosystem and is surrounded by something like an invisibility shield. And that invisibility shield hides the cancer in plain sight. So the goal for us is to try to uncover that shield, to use molecular genetic programming and come up with new therapies.
Well, specifically, that's one way. What else is the team going to do specifically to try to approach or conquer this pancreatic cancer?
So it's an international team. We're going to bring research ideas, models that are in the laboratory together with new types of therapies for patients. We're going to test them rapidly in a rapid deployment type of analysis, a matrix system to come up with a combination of therapies working off existing drugs. That's one of the key parts, is because we're not going to develop new drugs, we're going to work with existing drugs. We can get a cocktail, and therefore within literally months from the start, and this is going to start basically in this month, in 6 months we'll be starting our first trials.
Yeah, and let's talk about those clinical trials. So who would they be geared toward?
They're going to be geared towards patients who are literally walking into the clinic with a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. And the ones who sign up to be parts of these trials will be the first ones getting these new therapies. We'll start with small pilot trials and then expand these as the team goes on.
How is pancreatic cancer generally treated today?
Well, there's 2 approaches to its treatment. Initially, if it's possible to do surgical treatment, that will be done. But still, people who get surgery often don't survive long. So the second is chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is typically 2 drugs that are given, that are approved for pancreatic cancer, but they have only a modest amount of survival time, 6 weeks each. That's not very much.
Aside from what you're working on, have there been other advances in treating pancreatic cancer? And if not, how come the progress has been so slow?
It's a very challenging and powerful foe. And it hides itself, and because it hides itself, it's been difficult to understand how to treat it. So Our secret is not just going after the cancer, it's going after this invisibility shield. That's the secret.
And we have to end on this, but what's the timeline for this clinical trials? You say they're going to start soon, and how can people find out more about them?
The first trials will start in 6 months, and then the second trial will start probably about another 3 or 4 months after that. And these will be posted on the Stand Up to Cancer website.
Okay. Dr. Ron Evans, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The haunting melody of Meditation by Massenet outside the Bataclan Theater in Paris. A Russian violinist paid tribute to those killed after Friday's attack with this impromptu performance today. This is just one of many musical tributes to the young fans caught in a deadly attack during a live concert by a California band. People continue to leave behind flowers, candles, and messages outside the theater. San Diego is enjoying some mild autumn weather, 70s by the beaches, even warmer in the inland valleys with 70s and 80s. Clear skies in the mountains with 60s and 70s, 70s and 80s in the deserts. Here's what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom on Morning Edition. The sounds of silence prized in Oceanside, the city leaders who are exploring ways to keep trains on track for a quiet zone. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.